I was driven towards the medical field.
Two things grabbed my attention right off the bat.
I thought to myself, wow, what the hell is going on here?
This figure was terrifying.
I felt like I was looking into the face of a demon.
I couldn't breathe. I was so scared. No contact, friend! I thought, this is it. This is how I'm going to die.
Most in this small town consider the functioning half of this hospital to be the essential part.
Hey man, this looks really great.
But Kimm Anderson is excited about the part of the hospital complex that is abandoned.
Fantastic. Space like this, I could definitely keep some of the kids entertained. This is fantastic.
Kimm has been looking for a place to build a haunted house attraction for years.
Man, thank you so much, thank you.
If I could ever find a building, this town could use something like that to keep the youth busy. Instantly, when I got close, I could feel that vibe. Super creepy. It was just like, oh my God, I gotta have this place. When you see the building for the first time, you have that uneasy feeling. To enter the building, it just is amplified. I did a quick walkthrough. You couldn't get much scarier. It looked like one day they decided, okay, we're leaving. Leave everything but the patients. It was a perfect fit. All the stuff was there. I didn't have to do a ton of props. There was surgical lights, hospital beds, gurneys, old equipment, everything I needed.
When the hospital closed down, essentially everybody just upped and left. When Kimm walked in to view the place, it was hard for him to tell this actually wasn't a functioning hospital.
There was a ton of work. I mean, we started out the first year with 2 or 3 rooms to be open and ready. There's definitely a charge in the air. You could just feel all the hairs on your arms stand up. I would peek into the doors and things like that. It was hair-raising, almost electrifying.
But the strange energy in the place suddenly ramps up.
I could hear the footsteps. I was so freaked out. Rationally, I'm thinking, okay, somebody's messing with me. My friends are messing with me.
Somebody there?
Opening a haunted house attraction is going to have consequences. You are almost guaranteed to stir up the souls of those that still haunt the place.
I felt uneasy, but it was just the walkthrough. And so I really didn't have time to physically know what I was feeling.
Though the experience rattles him, Kimm is no stranger to haunted houses.
Started staging haunted houses when I was young. I worked for a local haunted house that I came across by accident.
When he was 15, Kimm was headed down a troubled path.
I was a little rebel kid. I didn't do anything really wrong, but I definitely was in for partying and having a good time.
But the job at the haunted attraction changes the course of Kimm's life.
So they put me in costume, and when people come by, you jump out and scare them. I jumped out, perfect timing, first time, scared them so bad. And I was just laughing my ass off. I was like, oh my God, this is for me.
Kimm Anderson has found his calling.
If it wasn't for that, I don't know what road I would have gone down. And I told myself, if I could ever do something for somebody like they did for me, I'd want to do it.
19 years later, Kimm is making that dream come true.
I knew that October 1st I needed to be open. I remember headed down hallway number 2 and looking and stopping. I mean, there's a lot of noises, a lot of bangings of the doors, things like that. And I thought to myself, wow, what the hell is going on here? It was frozen. I looked, I didn't see anything there. I went around to the opposite side where the other door was, and I didn't see anything down the hallway. I started thinking something's not right, something's feeling weird. I heard the giggles around me. It wasn't a facility that I usually let the little kids into. There was a lot of equipment around, things like that. And so I wasn't letting any of the children come in.
Hello? Hello, who's in here?
So I thought that maybe somebody was in there with their kids, that they had come down to check on me.
I know you're in here. I can hear you.
So I started walking the building loudly. Hey, is anybody in here?
Look, if you don't come out, I'm gonna leave. You're gonna be locked in all night, okay?
Hey, well, I'm locking up. You don't want to be locked in here, trust me. And I had no answers.
Hello?
Although I couldn't see them, I had a feeling that there were 2 kids in there playing.
I'm gonna leave. You're gonna be stuck here all night. All right?
In my rational brain, there was not even any rationality to it. My brain just said, this is a warning, get out. And I probably should have listened. October 1st, I needed to be open. And so I spent a lot of nights there, decorating on my own. So one night, I'm building in a room, and I had an A-frame ladder. I'd set a tool up on top of the ladder. I would get down to maybe grab some other screws or do something. And I would come back, and the drill that would be on the ground. I would never leave the room. It would happen while I was in there. But okay, did I kick the ladder? Did I, again, rationally, I'm trying to explain what's happening. So I got into the habit, at the top of the ladder, there are little holes to hold your tools. I would stick the drill down inside the hole, and then I would get back down on the ladder, knowing that they're made not to have them fall out.
As Kimm Anderson builds a haunted house in an abandoned hospital, he experiences the inexplicable.
The drill had came out of the hole and hit me like right on the back of the neck.
That's very unmistakably not a friendly act. Whoever it was that haunted this old hospital probably didn't approve of the fact that he was coming in and converting it into a haunted house. This is a huge red flag when a place is haunted. It's almost guaranteed to stir up paranormal activity.
It seems unlikely that gravity alone is responsible.
Somebody had to have lifted that drill up out of that hole and threw it down on my neck. I'd already received the get out warning, and now I've got things being thrown at me. It was definitely terrifying. I think I didn't go back for 2 or 3 days after that, trying to grasp in my head what was really happening and if I really should be doing this.
Although terrified, Kimm remains determined to bring his attraction to life.
The kids needed it. You know, they needed something to belong to like I did when I was young. And so my brain wouldn't let me go the other way. It just said, no, you'll figure it out. Keep working for the bigger purpose, and let's see what happens.
So Kimm returns to the hospital to examine an attraction left behind by former staff.
The nurses had taken all of the curtains throughout the whole hospital and stuck them in one room and made a little maze in there for when they had done their little haunted house. It was actually a fairly good haunted attraction scene. I thought, well, I'm gonna go in there and see what the curtains are all about. Turns out it was one of the bigger rooms in the hospital that they had made this maze in, and I got kind of lost in there. And I ended up, I believe, in the corner of the room. The closer I got to the corner, the more my hair would stand up. It would just started to get super electrifying, and I could feel something moving on my leg.
Hey!
And I looked down, and the little tab on my cargo shorts was getting pulled. It was getting pulled out away from my leg. Almost felt like static electricity, but there was no clinging, there was no nothing. It was definitely terrifying. I couldn't explain it.
Get off me!
I was so freaked out, I panicked and just started bulldozing through all the curtains to get out of the room. There was no time to think. I left the hospital and I kind of caught my breath.
Kimm struggles to understand what he's just experienced.
If you would have talked to me 12 years ago and asked me about ghosts, I would have laughed. To me, it was right up in the realm of aliens and Bigfoot. It just didn't happen. So I had to find out what was happening. I had some ghost hunter friends tell me, do a recording. Go in and ask questions with a recorder on, and then review it. So I went down to the local store, and I bought a little cheap recorder.
Spirit, if you're in here, say something. Let yourself be heard.
And I waited. I didn't hear anything. I said, is there anybody that wants to talk to me? I didn't feel weird. I didn't have that electricity. So I thought maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know.
What am I doing? Ridiculous.
Kimm considers the experiment a failure.
The goal of any paranormal investigator is to capture definitive proof of paranormal activity happening. That's the holy grail for almost all of us. We want to capture something that is undebunkable, that is beyond question, and we'd like to use it to demonstrate to those who are skeptical, hey, this stuff really does happen, and it happens more often than you might think.
Once outside, Kimm can't help but review the recording.
Spirit, if you're in here, say something.
And I had the digital recorder on. I had rewound it, and I'm listening to it.
Let yourself be heard.
I said, I'm dying. I was so f***ing scared. Rewound it.
Spirit, if you're in here, say something. Let yourself be heard.
And I heard it again. And I knew I was the only person in that room, and it scared the out of me. And I thought to myself, this is up. There's really something here. What am I gonna do? So I go home, it's pretty late. I'd worked a full day at work and then a full night there. I was pretty exhausted, and I go home, and it just didn't feel right the whole way.
Kimm hopes a good night's sleep will give him perspective on everything he's been experiencing.
and I shut the light off to go to sleep. And I hear a bunch of rustling. And I don't really see anything. There's nothing there that was noticeable. And I laid back down and I went to bed. And I don't know how long it was. And I heard this massive crash. Everything on my vanity had been wiped off and thrown onto the floor.
Spirits are not necessarily limited to one location. All Kimm could think about was getting some rest. Little did he know that he brought something back home with him.
My heart's racing, and panicking. I turned off the light, and I don't know how I did it, but I fell asleep. My eyes open up, and I saw this huge shadow standing next to my bed. I woke up, there was something perched on my chest. It was pushing down on my chest, and I couldn't breathe. It almost felt like there was a hand over my mouth. I couldn't speak, I couldn't do anything, I was paralyzed. And I thought, this is it. This is how I'm going to die.
Building a haunted house in an abandoned hospital, Kimm's confronted by an angry spirit that follows him home.
And I just lost my breath. And it got heavier and intense and more intense. There was a strong smell of like decaying flesh.
This is no ethereal spirit. Its aim is to kill.
There have been a number of documented cases in which people were physically harmed by ghosts, pushed downstairs, broken bones. Kimm felt that his life was in danger.
But the spirit's attack is interrupted by the return of Kimm's wife.
She turned on the light and it was all gone. There was still an odor in the room, and she thought that was weird. She was like, what does that smell? And I had to tell her the story of what happened. I think that was the turning point for me when it followed me home. At that point, it was wherever I went. So even in the safety of my own home, it came for me. I knew at this point that there was something I needed to find out. Why is this happening?
But before he gets any answers, opening day arrives. He has no choice but to go through with the plan.
It was my baby, and so I had to be there and make sure that it happened.
After weeks of hard work, Kimm is finally ready to unveil his masterpiece.
October 1st was the day that we opened the haunted attraction.
Come on over.
Kimm assembles the neighborhood kids he's enlisted to help
Let's
out.
have a look at you, okay? Remember what we practiced, all right?
And their job is to scare the patrons, just like he was hired to do years ago.
Everybody in positions, because we're gonna open up tonight, okay?
Kimm does one last rehearsal before the doors open to the public.
I am the very first person to walk through the haunted house. So I walk through and I make sure everybody's staged and ready to go.
Was good. You had to be scared.
The very first room, it was a big white maze. Everybody in there was okay, good to go, no problem at all. I remember turning the hallway and looking and stopping, thinking something's not right. That electric charge came, something's feeling weird.
But having only experienced the paranormal when he's alone, Kimm pushes his discomfort aside.
So I walk into the nurse's station, and everybody from the nursery are huddled in that nurse's station.
Guys, what's going on? What's going on?
There's a real ghost in there. We all saw it.
And they are freaking out. They're scared to death.
We get more ghost sightings at Halloween than any other time of the year, and there are two schools of thought as to why. On the one hand, some people believe that the veil between our world and the next, the worlds of the living and the dead, is at its thinnest then. Other people believe that it's no more paranormally active than any other time of the year, but more people are thinking about ghosts and therefore tend to report more activity.
Kimm doesn't doubt the kids, but he doesn't want them to panic.
I says, come on, there's no such thing. And they said, no, she's out there, everybody saw her. I said, okay, you guys stay here. I'm gonna go out into the hallway and I'm gonna take a look. Standing in the doorway was this little girl, and I could see her plain as day. She had really long brown hair. She had a white dress that went from her neck all the way to the ground. The weirdest part was not that I could see her in great detail. I could hear her.
It's not there.
I've never heard a spirit before.
It's just not there.
And I said, what's not fair? She goes, I just want to do what they're doing. I want to scare people. And I was just like blown away. It's still, I get goosebumps. My hair's standing up talking about this little girl.
Kimm's fear of the paranormal turns to something else altogether.
My father instincts can kick in pretty fast. I said, I'm gonna make you a deal. I said, see all these beds? I said, I want you to hide under those beds. And when people come by, I want you to grab at their feet.
Okay.
And she went, and she disappeared. It happened very, very fast. It's so weird too, because everything around you stops. I heard no music from the haunted house. There was nobody else involved. And just like it came in, it went out. As soon as she was gone, it was, and I was like, oh my God, we're opening.
Kimm has no time to take in the profound encounter. It's a case of the show must go on.
I went back into the room and I went up with his kids and I said, listen, I don't know what you're talking about. I just walked up and down this hallway. There's no ghosts in there. I said, let's just get in our parts and scare the out of some people. That's why you're here.
The attraction is such a success, Kimm runs one on Halloween every year.
It's the craziest thing that's ever happened to me ever in my life.
But Kimm is still left with one unanswered question. Who is the terrifying entity who tracked him to his home?
I started asking around. There were rumors about a doctor that had kept doing medical experiments. And of course, then you had rumors about people dying in there.
I'm dying.
I believe that's kind of why that energy was centralized in that room.
With no plans to give up his business, Kimm finds a way to cope with the spirit activity he encounters.
Kimm was smart enough to realize that he was in a fight he probably couldn't win. What he ended up doing was coming to a truce with the spirits of the old hospital. He would tell them that opening a haunted house was one of the best ways to preserve the building for the future.
I think I've made amends with them almost. Like they found out that I'm not there to destroy what they had. I'm there to prolong it and keep it going.
The experience has changed not only his life, but how Kimm sees the afterlife.
The cool part about it is that I know that when they put me in that coffin and bury me 6 feet under, I'm still gonna go on. I'm still gonna be here, and I am gonna haunt out of somebody when they step into my hospital.
Veteran nurse Eileen Perfett works nights at a private long-term care facility.
Because I work the night shift, I am responsible for all 40 patients that are on my unit. I was kind of driven towards the medical field. I've always been drawn to helping people.
Eileen has forged a bond with one patient in particular.
We kind of took to each other right away, pretty much right from the get-go. She had been a nurse at one time in her life. She was the social butterfly of the unit. A very, very warm soul, very, very easy to talk to.
But on this night, Eileen detects signs that her patient's condition is worsening.
I noticed that she was very lethargic. She was having some issues with her breathing. I said, I'm gonna get a set of vital signs on you. I said, but I think you're gonna need to go to the hospital. Made the call, ambulance came, they took her to the hospital.
All nurses to the nurses station.
The patient returns to Eileen's care, but is still in poor health. She is comforted by her daughter.
How you feeling?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This particular night, I got report from the previous shift telling me that she was complaining of overall weakness.
It's gonna be okay, Mom.
She was clearly not herself. She was very, very weak. You know, her daughter knows that her mom is not long for this world. My fingers are crossed that she'll at least make it through the night.
Do you see angels around me?
She asked me, she says, "Do you see any angels around me right now?" I turn and I look, and I don't see anything. I said, "But I do feel that something is here." I said, "because the temperature in this room has changed."
No.
At that point, the room had gotten cooler than what it was. The temperature has dropped in the room for no apparent reason.
Me too.
I wasn't sure what was going to happen next.
Eileen senses a disturbing presence in her dying patient's room.
Her thermostat was specifically set at 72. But when I had looked on the wall, it was reading the room at 67. It was extremely bizarre for that to happen.
Entities seem to be able to manipulate their environment in a number of ways, and one of the ways that it can do that, or seems to be able to do that, is through temperature shifting. But we've noticed this is a consistent sign of hauntings in various cases. It will drop literally by 10 to 15 degrees in a room. So it's a very significant drop, and it happens almost instantly.
Naturally, you look around for an explanation. You look around to see maybe the air conditioner is on. She had no air conditioner in her particular room, so I couldn't even explain it off.
But Eileen has a vastly more difficult time explaining what she sees next.
And I look up, and there's this outline of a shadow. And it was just gone out of thin air. I had just recently started working at this facility, and I had heard some stories of paranormal activity, but I had not yet encountered any. It completely freaked me out. And as I left the room, I saw a woman in a hospital gown, identical to what this patient was wearing. And this hospital gown was the only one of its kind, and I had just placed it on this resident.
Eileen is without doubt that this is the resident she just left.
I wanted to get up close enough because here I am thinking it's her and wondering, okay, how did she get past me? And as ill as she is, there's no way she could be walking. So I go up to investigate. thinking, oh my God, she got out of bed and she's a fall risk. And there's nothing, just gone in thin air, just gone. I had no choice. I had to go around and do a real quick bed check. I had to make sure that no one was out of bed.
All of her patients are where they are supposed to be.
Everyone is accounted for. Make sure nobody's in the back kitchen. I make sure no one's in the residence break room. There's nobody there.
Worried and confused, Eileen goes looking for answers.
I stop at the nurse's station.
Hey, Sarah. Have you seen a resident walking in these hallways?
I said, did you see anybody come up the hall?
Mm-mm.
And they said, no.
Man, I could swear.
Having investigated the entire wing with nothing found,
Thank you.
Eileen returns to the resident's room and finds her patient. But also something completely terrifying.
I had gone back into this resident's room. I can see a very, very dark figure. There was no face. It was sheer blackness. There was not a hint of any eyes. There was not a hint of a nose. I saw no other appendages, no halos. There was no glowing. There was just this very dark, very black, cloaked figure.
Only Eileen sees the dark figure.
Eileen?
He was like nothing I have ever seen before. He was looking at her. Then he said something that made my heart stop.
Don't be afraid.
I was completely unprepared for the terror that I was about to experience.
Nurse Eileen Perfett is confronted by escalating and terrifying paranormal events at work.
The thing said, don't be afraid. But that is not how I was feeling at that time. I was completely terrified. I didn't know what to do with this thing.
Eileen?
He and I were talking and conversing. Although my mouth wasn't moving, it was all going on in my head.
What's going on? Eileen? What's going on?
Frozen with fear, Eileen is unable to hear anything but the sounds emanating from the cloaked figure.
And I asked him, I said, were you in here when the temperature dropped, when I noticed the temperature drop?
I wasn't.
He said, I wasn't in here. He said, but
others were.
Others were in here.
Many times when we're dealing with conversations with entities, they refer to the others or groups of entities around them. And they seem to very much be in consciousness clusters, and they seem to almost travel in groups in a way. So this is not the first time that we've heard of an entity referencing the idea that they're a part of a larger cluster or group.
I said, what are you doing here? And he said, I'm here to help her.
Suddenly, the entity vanishes.
It was at that moment that I allowed myself to relax and let everything else happen as it was meant to happen. When I examined her, she was dead. She had passed away.
The resident has moved on.
Who was this person walking around in the hallways?
I think it was the individual who was actively passing.
Eileen saw a patient walking in the hallway where she just shouldn't have been. Astral projection tends to be common when somebody is in their last stages of life. We see this often with something called crisis apparitions as well, where that will happen either just before somebody passes away or just afterwards. It's a highly reported phenomenon.
Being the social butterfly that she was, I feel that she was just going from room to those people that she was closest to and seeing them and saying her goodbyes before she left this world.
Former EMT and current pastor Betty Lawrence tends to a small congregation.
What I loved about being a pastor was being able to be there for people when they didn't feel they were comfortable talking to anyone else. I had a congregant member who came up to me one afternoon after service, and she asked that I would go and visit her aunt. She went on to tell me that her aunt was very ill and most likely was going to die.
Betty often ministers to the dying at the nearby hospital and agrees to visit the woman's terminally ill aunt.
Hello. Hi, I'm here to see a patient in room B37.
Oh, she's over there.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you.
Going to visit a family member that I've never met is always a bit tricky, but I figured that because the congregant member had asked me, that the family member would welcome my visit.
Betty immediately feels that something is not right.
Two things grabbed my attention. The first was the room was cold, like the air conditioning was turned up as high as it could go. And the second was a noise. It's kind of like a hum, like almost felt like it made the room vibrate.
So this case where they hear this humming sound in the patient's room, if it was something mechanical or man-made, everyone would hear it. But the fact that it's just them hearing it kind of says to me that Betty's, number one, probably sensitive, so she's hearing it. The woman may be hearing it because she's getting close to the end, so something's trying to communicate there.
The patient was asleep, and I was debating whether or not to wake this frail individual up because it was evident she was very ill. I had the thought, well, maybe I'll say a silent prayer. Her eyes opened and she looked at me.
Hello.
I introduced myself and I said to her, "Hi, I'm Pastor Betty."
It's nice to meet you.
The look on her face went from being that of a frail, helpless old woman to her eyes got dark.
No prayers!
She looked at me and said, "I don't want any prayer." I thought, what have I walked into? I actually physically recoiled. It was very startling and frightening, but it got worse.
Pastor Betty Lawrence makes a routine hospital visit that suddenly turns demonic.
Her eyes got dark with intensity. You almost didn't see any of the whites of her eyes. And she dropped into this guttural, growly voice. In an attempt to save the visit, I took a deep breath and asked the woman,
Is there anything I can do for you?
You get rid of the child!
And she said to me, you could get this little kid out of this room. I looked at the corner of the room and there was nothing there. It was just a corner of the room, but she certainly could see someone. You could watch her eyes follow it. I made the mistake of dropping into my pastoral training, and I said to her,
Prayer will help the child.
I said I don't want any prayers!
I felt like I was looking into the face of a demon.
Their voice will change, their eyes will change, and this is because you're talking to something demonic. It's taken over, and it knows much more than we do as humans. It's not human, it was never human.
Why wouldn't you just leave?
Pastors just don't run. And then I did a silent prayer in my head. What do I do now, Lord?
Prayer! Out of here! I don't want any prayers! Get out!
Get out!
I no sooner thought that than she looked at me again and said, no prayer! It was as if this demon inside this woman was reading my mind.
Betty knows her mission is to deliver her patient from evil.
Get out!
I needed to not be afraid of this evilness I was facing.
You don't want to mess with something like that. It will harm you. Even if it doesn't possess you, it will do harm to you because you're trying to help the individual who is.
We're taught that as a believer, he who is in me is greater than anything. And yet here I was retreating.
Terrified for herself and her patient, Betty seeks help from the nurse on duty.
So we went into the room. And the old woman was sound asleep, and there was no noise. And the nurse looked at me and said, "What are you talking about?" I never saw the woman again. She died within a week.
But Betty cannot stop thinking about the incident.
Did she say anything unusual to you?
I did go see the niece and ask her why she sent me. She told me that she hoped I could get through to this aunt where no one else had. She was worried about her aunt's salvation.
For Betty, that the woman was unable to make peace with God explains the demon's presence.
That evil thing that was there, that was influencing her, that was possibly inside of her, was waiting for her last earthly breath so it could have 100% control of who she truly was. I can't judge if she was a bad or a good person, but there was a spiritual battle taking place inside this extremely frail old woman. The reason that demon was hanging out there was it was waiting for her to die.